I knew she'd fire me the second she smiled. Not the kind of smile you give someone you appreciate. Not the kind that says thank you for carrying this company through 5 chaotic fiscal years without once taking a sick day. No, it was the kind of smile people wear right before they twist the knife. Too wide, too bright, all teeth, no soul. That morning started like every other. Same coffee, same elevator ride, same badge beep. I even brought her a copy of the quarterly forecast she'd ignored 3 times already, printed and bound. She liked things printed, said it made her feel like the numbers mattered more when they had weight. I walked into her office and saw that smile waiting for me like a trap. Her name's Madeline Crane, CEO of Riventech Solutions. Woman dresses like she invented minimalism and smells like expensive sugar. Built the company off her father's patents and never once gave credit to the engineers who kept it running. People like me. My name is Dorian Vale. I'm 39 years old, and until 15 minutes ago, I was senior systems architect at Riventech. 6 figures, sealed server clearance, 16 direct reports, 10 of whom are still convinced she wakes up early for them. She doesn't. I'd asked for a raise every year since promotion. Not a wild ask, just something reflective of the load I'd been carrying, while she outsourced entire departments and called it lean innovation. But every time I asked, she'd give the same 2-word answer: next quarter. I built Riven's entire internal architecture: redundant layers, proprietary encryption, zero-trust design. The kind of system that gets pitched at black hat conferences and still holds up under scrutiny. No leaks, no breaches, not a single vulnerability in 5 years. Not until her. This last denial stung worse than the others. Not because I needed the money, but because she didn't even pretend to think about it. Just looked at me, blinked twice and said, "You're already paid well above average for your role. If you're unhappy, maybe you should consider whether you're still aligned with our vision." That night, I uploaded my resume. Quietly. 1 click. That's all. 3 days later, HR called me in, said they heard a rumor I'd been applying elsewhere, asked if I was emotionally committed to Riventech's mission. I didn't answer. I just smiled. They didn't like that. This morning I was told Madeline wanted to see me. No calendar invite, no meeting room, her office, 8 a.m. sharp. She liked her executions early. I stepped in and she didn't offer me a seat. Just that damn smile. "So," she said, "I hear you're looking around." I didn't respond, just stood there. Let the silence grow teeth. "I always knew you'd be the type to jump ship eventually," she went on, voice sweet like poison berries. The quiet ones usually are. "You were always just a seat filler, Dorian, a very expensive placeholder." She turned to her tablet and tapped something. My badge deactivated with a single beep. 1 blink and 5 years evaporated. "You're done here." Effective immediately. Then came the twist. "And if I find out you've taken anything, I'll make sure you never work in this industry again." I should have been angry, should have felt something, but all I felt was peace. She thought she'd caught me mid-leap, thought she'd pulled the rug out just before I landed. But the truth was, she was late, too late. I smiled back softly. The kind of smile that hides entire blueprints behind the eyes. "Well," I said, "thank you for your time, Madeline. And good luck." Her face twitched, just a little, just enough. I turned, walked out of the room, didn't look back, didn't need to. She thought she'd slammed the door on me. She didn't know I'd already built the exit myself. Brick by brick, password by password. I stepped into the parking garage, sunlight slicing through the concrete like a blade, climbed into the car, closed the door, took a breath. Then I said it. Quiet. Just loud enough for the silence to hear. Okay then. Let's begin. The first time I backed up her messages, it wasn't out of fear. It was reflex. 3 months before she fired me, I noticed a 30-second delay in our sandbox audit logs. Most wouldn't have caught it, but I don't live in most. My job was to build quiet systems that screamed only when it mattered. And this one was whispering. So I followed the thread. Buried beneath 2 layers of security obfuscation was a script, not one of mine, pinging outbound at irregular intervals. Nothing explosive, just metadata exfiltration, timestamps, sender/receiver IDs. But that alone was enough to raise the hairs on the back of my neck. Someone had embedded a relay inside our internal comms tool, masked to mimic autosync. Either a misfire from a third-party vendor, or something she approved. I started copying everything that passed through her node. Not aggressively, just a trickle, just enough to fill a slow-drip archive routed through a cold server that didn't officially exist. When you've lived your career surrounded by firewalls and phantom threats, you learn to build your own shadows. Before Riventech, I was Red Team Cyber for 3 federal contractors. Last badge I wore bore the DARPA seal. I specialized in penetration testing for defense-grade AI architecture. In simpler terms, I was paid to break the unbreakable, to simulate foreign adversaries, and to make sure our digital vaults didn't have back doors the public didn't know about. I left after 9 years. Burnout mostly. You can only stare into so many system cores before the screen starts following you home. Riven was supposed to be quieter, civilian work, safe. It wasn't. The further I dug, the more rot I found. I created dead keys, silent admin credentials triggered only by exact biometric sequences. Not even the system recognized them unless I wanted it to. I mirrored her terminal sessions, mouse movements, keystrokes, camera snapshots, into a secure vault stitched together from 10 virtual drives with 10 fake names. If she ever found them, they'd look like corrupt backups. She wouldn't know what she was looking at until it was too late. And one night, at 2:14 a.m., I found it. A compressed archive, deeply nested and encoded with dual-stage encryption. Took me 4 days to crack it. Inside were message threads between Madeline and an anonymized address, tied to an untraceable .onion relay. Most were vague, impersonal, but some weren't. We can push Q3 funds through the Delaware node. Just redact the interns and NDA the rest. She's pregnant. Tell her she gets 2 months paid, then nothing. I'll handle the messaging. I want the back-end team scared. Scared people don't unionize. There were more, dozens. One referenced a shell company in Barbados, used to reroute executive bonuses through fake project codes. Another outlined a plan to force attrition in the QA department by silently cutting their tool access and flagging it as non-compliance. I didn't send them anywhere. Not yet. You don't scream when you find the match. You wait till the gas has filled the room. Every time she looked down at her desk, she thought she was in control. She didn't know the hardware team owed me 3 favors, and that one of them involved embedding a pinhole mic and lens inside the brushed steel frame of the mirror on her wall. Looked like decor. Cost less than a protein shake. Showed me everything. Right now, I was watching her sip her oat milk latte and rehearse her board call. She wore that same eggshell blazer, the one she always chose when pretending to be transparent. She was alone, relaxed, legs crossed, scrolling. I caught a smile flicker across her lips. Not the smile she gave me in the office. This one was real. This one was for her partner. She picked up her phone, spoke low. "I've got him out. We're in the clear." My hands didn't twitch. My breath didn't shift. I just pressed 2 fingers to the terminal beside me and saved the clip. She didn't know the walls had ears, and she didn't know the ears remembered everything. The email hit legal at 9:17 a.m. Anonymous sender. Encrypted packet. Internal only. Just 1 page. A screenshot of an invoice labeled Consulting Services Q3 with a vendor no one had ever heard of. Attached to it was a signature block. Hers. Time-stamped. Digitally signed. Problem was, the job code listed hadn't existed in over a year. Finance confirmed it was closed, audited, and archived. It was just one breadcrumb. But in a place like Riventech, breadcrumbs rot fast, and the smell spreads faster. Madeline called an emergency department heads meeting an hour later. Her tone was calm, but her left hand wouldn't stop twitching against the coffee cup. She smiled, like always, but it was the kind of smile you wear when your foundation's cracked and you're trying not to blink before the ceiling caves in. "I want full log access on all incoming and outgoing data transfers this week," she said. "Tiered permissions, flagged anomalies, and someone sweep VPN activity. Deep sweep. No exceptions." People nodded. No one spoke. She dismissed the meeting 5 minutes early. That same afternoon, I buried 4 files inside the shared network. Each was rigged to behave like a corrupted cache, appearing only when accessed in sequence. 1 through Outlook, 1 through Google Drive, 1 through our internal CMS, and 1 triggered by a name search in the company org chart. Each time one flickered into existence, it looked like a mistake. Garbled text, partial sentences. One of them said, "Laid off 27 with no severance." Another, email blackmail sent to HR/confirm deletion. None of them pointed directly at her, not yet. But the point wasn't exposure. It was erosion. Doubt doesn't need to yell. It just needs to echo. I rescheduled 2 executive calendar invites using ghost credentials she didn't know existed. One was a board meeting that suddenly moved up by 2 days. Another was a budget sync that vanished entirely, only to reappear 90 minutes later with a different invite link and a new agenda titled Unauthorized Spending, Q3 Review. By day 3, her tone changed. She slammed a cabinet so hard during a meeting, the video lagged mid-frame, snapped at an intern for not muting a Slack notification, walked straight into the analytics bullpen and demanded access logs from the last 6 weeks. When someone asked for clarification, she pointed directly at a junior analyst named Brooke and said, "Start with her." Brooke had just turned 22, barely out of onboarding. She was fired before the end of the day. I watched it unfold from my laptop in a coffee shop a few blocks from HQ. Sipped cold brew. Listened to the rain. And then, as the sun started to slip behind the glass towers, I thought of my father. He wasn't a gentleman, not cruel, but sharp, precise, a machinist by trade, built custom components for engines no one saw unless they were flying above conflict zones. He had this way of looking at a broken thing like it had betrayed him, not because it failed, but because it dared to pretend it wouldn't. "You don't take revenge with fire, son," he once said, the day I got beat up after school and asked for gas money. "You use fog." Let them choke on the unknown. So I sent her a gift. No note, no return label, just a simple wooden frame. Inside, a photo of the QA team she laid off during the pandemic, blurred slightly, like a half-faded memory or a dream that ended too soon. faces just recognizable enough to haunt her if she tried too hard to forget them. Tucked beneath the glass, a single typed line. Do you remember their names? They remember yours. The courier delivered it at 7:43 a.m. She opened it in her office. The camera feed showed her pause, lift it from the packaging, and stare at it longer than I expected. Her lips moved, but there was no sound. And then she dropped it face down in the trash. At 11:02 a.m., she stormed into the boardroom uninvited, slapped her palm on the conference table, and said, "Someone is watching me." Silence. No one answered, just stiff suits and dry eyes. And on the other side of a remote connection, I leaned back in my chair and whispered to no one. Finally. She's hearing echoes. The first external ripple came at 6:12 a.m., a ping to Riventech's legal inbox from a secured SEC address. Anonymous source. Attached, a 32-page PDF outlining potential violations of corporate governance, payroll misreporting, and misuse of investor capital. Most of it was dressed in suggestion, phrased like questions, not accusations. But the real hit was on page 23, a redacted thread detailing the artificial inflation of Q3 projections, backed by ghost vendor payments and off-books performance metrics. The accounts were frozen by noon. No announcements were made, but people knew. The air shifted. Conversations got quieter. Nobody opened their inbox without checking the ceiling first, like the lights might be listening. People stopped smiling in the elevators. Even the intern who used to whistle down the hallway walked with his head low. Madeline held a press conference the next morning. The video was streamed company-wide. White backdrop, Riventech logo printed just behind her right shoulder. She wore the same navy blazer she'd used in the IPO interview 3 years ago, like she was trying to summon past glory through dry cleaning. Her voice didn't waver, but her hands did. Subtle, rhythmic tremors beneath the surface of rehearsed calm. "We are cooperating fully with all inquiries," she said. "We have nothing to hide." But at that exact moment, her Slack history began circulating in encrypted fragments through private email chains, carefully filtered, just enough to suggest what she wanted buried. One message to a VP: push the pregnant one out before benefits kick in. Frame it as restructuring. Another to her executive assistant: if he wants severance, remind him about the NDA he signed after the Vegas incident. Even her browser history leaked. Sanitized, sure, but still damning. Late-night searches for Swiss business account opening under nominee. Can you delete shared cloud files permanently? And curiously, how long do whistleblowers get protection? She tried to pretend she didn't see the digital rot climbing through the walls. But she moved differently now. Kept her phone face down. Never left her office door open. Every time someone knocked, she flinched, like the knock was a hammer. It's not the explosion that breaks them. It's the slow, choking crawl of reputation collapse. The kind that doesn't announce itself with a bang, but with silence. Eyeballs that don't meet yours anymore. Handshakes that feel thinner. The kind of distance that turns colleagues into witnesses. I remembered her during one of those old all-hands Zoom calls, mid-pandemic, when the layoffs came. She'd smiled as she read the names. Didn't even pause. Just kept sipping her coffee, like she was announcing weather changes. "These reductions will help us stay lean," she said, "and focused." And then she laughed, as if someone had made a joke off camera. She used to say, "It's just business." She forgot business is made of people. 2 nights ago, I left a small, unmarked envelope in the mailbox of board member Wallace Gray, CFO turned board pitbull. The only one who ever dared ask her for a second source when she reported quarterly growth numbers that didn't quite match vendor receipts. Inside the envelope was a USB drive, encrypted, labeled only with today's date and a line of code only he would recognize. 74DC-9901-TRM. A ghost job ID from a shadow audit I'd run 4 years ago. One he quietly approved, after a similar discrepancy, almost cost us our FedCloud certification. I knew he'd plug it in. He always did like a clean ledger. But I didn't follow up. Didn't check his response. Didn't need to. Not yet. Let it sit. Let her sweat. Let the wolves sniff closer before the wind changes. That afternoon, she stormed into her office with a force that shook the picture frames. Door slammed hard enough to trip the shock sensor I'd rigged under her desk. My live stream flickered on. She stood there, hands clenched, chest rising and falling in sharp rhythm. Her eyes darted to the framed photo on the floor, the one from the team I'd sent. And then she screamed. Not loud, not long, but raw, guttural. Like something inside her cracked and couldn't find the seams to hold itself together. I watched her pace, then collapse into her chair, head in her hands. She thought I'd forgotten the raise. She didn't realize I'd remembered everything. The video hit the web at 6:04 a.m. No watermark, no intro, just a black screen that opened straight into her voice. Sharp, unmistakable, clipped, with the same self-satisfaction she used to wear, like perfume. We'll cut the accessibility upgrades next quarter. Let the legal team deal with optics. The disabled don't click ads anyway. Then laughter. Hers. Clear. Cruel. Followed by another voice asking, "What about the severance packages?" Her reply was immediate. "Frame it as culture realignment. They'll sign whatever we hand them, if the folder's thick enough." The clip ran for 14 minutes. It was internal recordings, some audio, some video, spliced chronologically. Call logs, strategy meetings, direct messages read aloud by a robotic filter to protect source identities. She laughed a lot in those clips, smiled too, talked about layoffs like rearranging furniture, talked about compliance like it was a crossword puzzle. Then came the flood. Every document I'd buried, every thread I'd mirrored, every node I'd silently tapped over the past year was dumped in a single decentralized block. Immutable, verifiable, time-stamped to hell and back. Offshore accounts, fake vendor payments, recycled job titles reused for diversity metrics, slush funds disguised as consulting fees. It all poured out in a synchronized cascade across social media, encrypted legal drops, and one specific URL that had been quietly embedded in the Riventech homepage footer for months. She never noticed it. By 8 a.m., #RivenCollapse was trending globally. By 9:10, the board called an emergency live stream. She looked like someone had drained all the pigment from her skin. No blazer today, just a black blouse and a neck stiff with tension. The room behind her was all glass and silence. Wallace Gray read the charges: misappropriation, falsification, abuse of power. The board voted, unanimous. We hereby terminate Madeleine Crane's contract, effective immediately. She didn't argue, didn't cry, not then. But her eyes moved, like they were searching for exits that no longer existed. 2 security officers appeared beside her. She stood slowly, hands trembling at her sides. As they guided her out, she looked into the camera, maybe at the world, maybe at herself, and her face broke just slightly. Not grief, not guilt, just the sudden, jarring clarity of being seen. Not for what she pretended to be, but for who she was. I watched it from the mezzanine level of the building across the street. No celebration, no fist pump, just stillness. The kind that only comes when the storm has passed and there's nothing left to brace against. The last time I saw her in person, she'd spat those words at me like they were bullets. "You bastard! How dare you?" I hadn't answered then. But now, with the dust settling and her empire collapsing beneath the weight of its own deceit, I finally did. I walked into her now empty office at dusk. No guards, no cameras, just ghosts. The photo frame she once kept on her desk was gone. The walls were bare. Only a single orchid remained by the window, dried and brittle. I moved to her desk and placed my old badge in the center. It was bent, scratched around the edges, the magnetic strip half peeled. On top of it, I left a post-it note. 2 words. Exit completed. They always say revenge is best served cold, but they forget. Cold things are preserved, kept in stasis, stored for memory. What I served was scalding, boiling, and it left nothing behind, not even ashes. And when she opened the news the next morning, what little she was allowed to see through a borrowed screen and a locked account, it wasn't just her name that was gone. It was her legacy, erased, like she was never here at all. They'll rebuild Riventech, of course, strip it down, rebrand, rename, new logos, new promises. They'll swear it was one bad apple, one rogue executive. And maybe that's true. But I've learned something in all this. Power doesn't rot in the spotlight. It rots in the silence, in boardrooms and blind eyes, in pay stubs that come late and promises that never arrive, in the smiles of people like her, people who believe no one is watching, but someone always is. This was my story, but it won't be the last.